Hello, everyone. I'm Anupama, a first year doctoral student at the University of Texas, Dallas. Thank you, Team IFM, for giving me the opportunity to present my work titled Needles to Say Women Quilters Narratives from the Past, Present, and Future with the Coming of Creative Technology for Creative Industries. My very first encounter to traditional folk quilters was when I was researching for a prison museum project in South India. I came across a Lambani family in one of the central jails. Lambanis are nomadic tribes from the Afghan region, now settled in many parts of India. In this visit, I witnessed three generations in all, a total of 13 or more members who were under a murder trial. The men had fought violently, wherein one member of this joint family was killed. A few accused, a few as accomplices, one tied to the other, were all in the prison on account of murder. The men were spread out lazing around, toddlers playing in mud, whilst the women folks sat under a tree chit chatting and quilting. An oldest veteran quilter amongst the group was teaching one of them how to carefully close in on the last patch. It was one of the most unexpected ways to witness this living tradition being passed down to the next generation in the true spirit of sisterhood, where one was being kind and supportive even in their trying times. This I recognize as creative dignity. The superintendent of the jail confirmed that these women would earn their wages if there were buyers for it. And that is how I purchased my first two quilts. My second experience was when I played a small supporting role in an art film called Kavdi, meaning quilt in a South Indian language. The movie centered around the life of a rural Indian woman protagonist called Kavadi Ambava, a widow raising two children by making beautiful quilts. The plot was based on her struggles to make ends meet while being cheated by middlemen and battling a misogynistic society that was both blind and deaf to the voice of women. It has been over 2 decades with these two encounters. Recently, I learned from a friend, Sangeeta, who works with crafters across the country, that the social scenarios have changed for the better for some craft communities, and one such craft being the quilting. Traditional folk quilters have been exposed to many NGO interventions, and a few prominent designers have been collaborating, and fair wages are being paid. Ministry of Textiles, Government of India recognizes this art form more than ever before and is committed to building market linkages for the products and is offering value addition training to communities in few promising states. Digital penetration in rural India has been both a boon and a bane because social media has grown a follower base for the traditional folk quilts and more transparency in the market transaction has encouraged quilters. Bane, because the younger generation are now preoccupied and distracted on their mobile devices, resulting in wasting their chance of receiving the knowledge being passed down, which was part of their elaborate and rich folk tradition from the older generation to the next generation. Over the decades, many researchers in humanities have approached the topic of quilting primarily on three very specific topics. One, quilting as an empowering tool for women to reclaim their agency and resist dominant narratives that marginalize them and oppress them. Two, as a form enabling them to express themselves creatively and assert their identities. Three, community quilting as means of care and sisterhood. I begin by close reading of Rosner et al. In the paper Making Core Memory, Design Inquiry into Gendered Legacies of Engineering and Craftwork. They present three key points. Both engineering and craftwork have traditionally been gendered, with engineering being associated with men and craftwork with women. They challenge these gendered notions and explore the ways in which they intersect and influence each other. Memory being central to the construction of gendered identities and understanding the relationship between memory and gender is essential to challenge gendered notions of engineering and craftwork. 3. Exploring the materiality of craftwork and engineering. They argue that both involve manipulation of materials to create new objects, and that materiality of these objects is central to their meaning and significance. Another paper that supports my inquiry with regard to quilt making and its pedagogical importance is Alana Butler's Quilt Making Among African American Women as a Pedagogy of Care, Empowerment, and Sisterhood. The potential of quilt making to address the social, emotional, and psychological needs of women to promote their well being and resilience. 2. Quilt making providing a safe space for women to share their experiences, support each other, and preserve their cultural heritage. During the pandemic, there were extensive reports published with regard to mobile users in rural India. The older generation barely had any access to the devices. The working male owned the primary phone, and the same was shared on need basis with the rest of the family members. Anita, another artist friend who works with quilter communities in Karnataka, shared that if she needed any updates on the progress of quilts that she had commissioned, she would have to wait for any one of the extended family members in the community to photograph it on his or her mobile device and send it via WhatsApp to her. Sometimes this could take days to locate a responsible person to mediate this information exchange. Reports on digital divide echoes on the basis of gender, income, education, geography, and age. However, in all of these conversations had with Anita and others working in these communities, it was observed that age and gender was the biggest barrier in this particular context. If one addressed this, many things could change to benefit the community at large. Noting the complexity of this matter, this presentation looks at one possible way in which this could be addressed in a country that is now with the largest user base for mobile phone to aid in restoring the faith of the quilters community for care and collaboration to sustain the craft through a pedagogical intervention. Also, through an ongoing project supported by the Commissionerate of Rural Development and Panchayat Raj in Karnataka called STEAMED, where science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics education is being implemented in Gram Panchayat libraries, meaning the public libraries, reaching middle and secondary school goers. STEAMED is committed to building STEAM mindset in students through the understanding of gender equity, digital literacy, 21st century life, career skills, basics of computational thinking, and coding. Along with STEAMED, this effort will be undertaken through the NGO network who directly work with the quilter communities. Drawing on feminist, historical, and designerly approaches, this presentation shares the ongoing work of a hybrid manual preparation as part of the STEAMED program. This manual is intended to encourage and initiate youngsters in these communities to actively collaborate with their veterans to bond with one another and share the joy of quilting to help continue the living tradition. It also creates opportunities for the veterans to learn the ways of using digital devices to explore technology and eventually use for their practice as seen fit. This initiation would have the veterans use the device regularly and collaboratively to gain the needed confidence and comfort to use independently thereafter. This design inquiry is timely, situated through the interdisciplinary research method, piggybacking on the STEAMED program. The goal of this intervention is to A. Deconstruct and break stereotypes of gendered legacies of work in the minds of the veteran quilters and the next generation quilters in the making. B. Reinforce the importance of materiality in quilting along with sensitizing the next generation quilters the value of materiality to create new objects. C. Sensitize the next generation of quilters to believe in the transformative power of this unique art form for their personal, social, emotional, and psychological development. D. Explore digital tools and technology through block based programming on mobile devices to instill a sense of play between the youngsters and quilters, which in the due course would lead them to their passion with purpose. I structure my arguments based on the hybrid manual work in progress. The first being deconstructing memory. In this, We draw inspiration from Rosner's project, and in an attempt to forge the collaboration of engineering and craft in this intervention, some activities in the manual are designed. This activity is working with paper and pencil with prompts. The first prompt is to draw a family tree of veteran quilters to trace their ancestral beginnings through songs and stories. It is important to note that all the activities are designed such that both the veteran and the young collaborators work throughout the entire process together. Upon visualizing the family tree, the youngster is asked to draw and write down the roles played by each member of the veteran's family. As an extension to the activity, the veteran is asked to draw out their first quilt based on memory. It could be a quilt that was passed down or made by self or with the community. They would have to visualize and pen together the painstaking process of love and labor based on the veteran's memory of that quilt. All the pencil drawings are now laid out on the ground for the two to compose a mutually agreeable pattern for an imaginary quilt. The role of the facilitator is crucial in helping the two agents navigate their journeys and discovering one another and helping them forge connections. These pencil drawings and notes could help start a conversation on the roles played by members in the family, which in turn would help them deconstruct the socially stereotyped gender roles, behaviors, attributes, and activities in the families. The second is exploring materiality. Patience and persistence is the virtue of traditional quilters, be it patience with regard to time, people, or objects. The latter includes needles to threads to pre loved clothes to every material that the quilter works with. The opposite is true for the younger generation. For millennials, particularly, their engagement with materials is very different from that of the veterans. Based on their social identities, they are the digital natives, and often everything is related to their mobile devices, and their sense of time is at the speed of the notification alerts they receive. With this contrast, it is important to sensitize the two to understand the differing values and priorities of each other without judgments of the materials that they engage with. One of the activities is designed for a role reversal exercise. The two take turns to capture the five object pictures in their immediate surroundings based on their order of priority, using the mobile device and share with the other to build their arguments as the other. This thinking exercise would encourage the two to respond through each other's perspectives and take a moment to reflect on the activity. This activity could extended by the facilitator to help them understand that both the arts and the engineering involve manipulation of materials to create new objects, be it patiently and methodically sourcing materials for quilting by the veterans, as well as youngsters compiling and curating their best selfies on their mobile devices to create a story for their social media. Both are not just manipulation of materials, but also are outcomes of different social cultural experiences of the two. The third, the safe space. Often, quilters' physical space is one that is casual, open, and welcoming of more members to join the circle. Quilt making in life itself creates a safe space where women have grown with each other over time with trust and bonding. Many quilts are made while sharing one another's joys and struggles. Every quilt, therefore, has a memory attached with it. Youngsters grow up in these spaces and spend hours with their mothers and grandmothers. Once they reach puberty, girls tend to spend more time in these spaces compared to boys. This safe space has let many young women find their identity as they become party to conversations in the circle of trust. These forms of engagement have been healing for time immemorial for quilters. It is not about stories or the community space alone. It is about a moment in the day that has allowed quilters their personal time for reflection. With many NGO interventions and workshop facilitation, followed by discussions around how these making processes have unfolded in their personal healing, has drawn the attention of educators to incorporate it in school curriculums. Unfortunately, today the school curriculums encourage quilting as a method to help students build their sense of concentration and reflection to their work, but limited in scope and in an attempt to integrate STEAM learning, in which it is placed in the arts as introduction to line, color, form, and composition, if not a maximum extension to math class to study symmetry and patterns in middle schools. 4. Creative technologies to instill play. In 2022, under the STEAM Ed program, Scratch Junior was introduced as part of the library supervisor's training. In the initial days, their resistance to try was alarming. The enthusiasm of the students to learn Scratch was encouraging. On completion of the pilot engagement, one of the feedback received was that Scratch helped the library supervisors bond with the students, which in turn increased the library footfall. Similarly, here the youngsters would use visuals from the veteran quilts and script codes to piece together the final output along with the veteran. This would not only encourage photo documenting the process, but also let the veterans see how digitally aided tools are used to create work of art. Exploration of these preliminary blocks through computational thinking could advance an appreciation from play to passion by veterans and youngsters towards digital tools and the art of quilting accordingly. It is important to note here that this is an attempt to build bonds between the two to appreciate each other's material engagement and not necessarily make them proficient in the use of Scratch. In conclusion, the Indian quilter community is slowly but steadily growing with the support of many stakeholders. Economic stability is certainly the most important factor to continue the next generation of quilters to commit to the form. With the coming of technology, traditional quilters have a unique opportunity to aid the knowledge economy. This is possible if the cultural preservation is holistically understood, where pedagogy is at its core. The human capital can be enriched if the inherited knowledge is transferred with transformative actions, both from the veterans and the next generation quilters as equal stakeholders for the exchange to happen. An investment in building capabilities of individuals and collectives open to intergenerational learning aided by technology can help create networks of knowledge that can then maximize the impact of all three: restoration, conservation, and preservation. Hope and optimism with mindful use of technology can create space for meaningful conversations by helping the communities ask the right questions at the right time, thereby breaking down the dominant narratives and promote the next generation's deeper understanding of the changing world and one's place within it to sustain the form forever. Thank you. I hope this presentation gives you um, a bit of an understanding of the Indian quilters and the work that is currently ongoing in the STEAM-Ed program and the possibilities of integrating this hybrid manual into the program to take this forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Team IFM, and look forward to the panel discussion.